We have his former fellow congressman here with us this morning, the gentleman who represents this area so well, Congressman Aaron Schock. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. Good to be with you both. I'm honored to be on.
Well, we thank you very much for your... we did interrupt his morning routine. Aaron is a runner. That's why he stays in such great condition, looks so good. And the reason he's a little bit late is he ran this morning and got to Burton View and took a wrong turn. And so he had his 4.5 miles in. So
well, part of the reason he looks so good is he's only 12 years old.
Yeah.
You are indeed now the youngest, are you not?
That's right. So far, I'm the youngest.
There's a gentleman in North Carolina that
you?
is young, too.
Yeah, he's kind of an old man now. He's like 34 years old. So
wow, over the hill.
Yeah, you know, he just got married, too. So, you know, he's kind of slipping, you know.
Well, I tell you what, if I were you, I'd think long and hard before you get involved in that. I think you got enough on your plate right now.
Yeah, exactly. Just what I need is someone else bossing me around.
Yeah,
well,
really.
Speaking of bossing you around.
Behind every successful man, there's a good woman pushing.
There you
You
go.
know?
Way back. Bossing around, good term. Aaron, as you travel your district, what is the number one concern that your constituents tell you about? What is the big, besides obviously the taxes and all that, you know, economics, but what's the number one thing that your constituents seem to be concerned about, Aaron?
Well, I think there's an overriding sense of frustration that Washington, D.C. is not listening. And it stems from the debt that we continue to accumulate at record speed. It stems from legislation that is in sharp contrast to what the American people want. I mean, the health care bill is a case in point example. I mean, they couldn't have spoken any louder or clearer, from the town hall meetings to the election of Scott Brown in Massachusetts to the fact that the Democrats have an 80-seat majority in the House and they could barely pass their bill because their members knew that the overwhelming majority of Americans are opposed to their health care bill, and yet they passed it anyways.
But you will have it, and you will be happy.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for them, the American people do not respond well to that. They still believe that the government works for them. They don't work for the government. But I guess to answer your question, Bill, is that it's an overriding sense of frustration that, I mean, if you talk to a person, probably the big issue is debt and spending. The national polls show people are actually worried more about the future of the country and the debt than they are even about their taxes going up. But when you really boil it down to them as a person, they're worried about their job. They're worried about getting one if they don't have one. They're worried about keeping one if they do. They're worried about their IRAs and their 401ks coming back in half. And they're looking to Washington, D.C. and saying, what are you guys doing to help turn things around? What are you guys doing to reinstill faith in the market and in the economy? And everything we are doing, I would argue, is the opposite. Private businesses, entrepreneurs are saying, hey, what are my cost of employees going to be?
That's right.
Because our health care costs are going up. What's the cost to manufacture my goods going to be? Because my electricity rates with cap and trade can go up. What are my tax regulations going to be? You know, just within the health care bill alone, there's 1,200 provisions.
So there are the questions. Let's have some answers.
Well, the fact of the matter is, as I said, we have instilled a lot of unease in the markets within entrepreneurs, and until there is some balance put back in Washington, D.C., until people know that there's certainty about the regulatory environment, people aren't going to take risks. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I mean, I started businesses when I was in middle school and high school, and it's all about risk and reward. And you're not going to go for the reward if you don't know what your risk is.
You can't.
And so I would argue that the Republicans have a very good chance of winning control this year. It's not over. It's far from over. There's 2 months yet till Election Day. But the winds are certainly in that direction. People are wanting two parties. They're wanting a system of checks and balances, and they're wanting, quite frankly, to clip the wings of this administration that they feel is a little out of touch and out of control.
What will that do in the event that you're right, that the Republicans will gain seats? What would that do to all this bickering out there? Would it cut it down?
Well, you know, it'd force the president's agenda to the center, which I think, quite frankly, for his sake, would benefit him. But more importantly, it would benefit the American people. The fact of the matter is, we had a president who ran a centrist presidential campaign, focused not on ideas, but on ideals. And what I mean by that is, I guarantee you most people who voted for President Obama couldn't tell you what his idea was when it came to health care reform. I guarantee you they couldn't have told you what his idea was for carbon emission and a carbon tax. But they could tell you his ideal, which was his ideal was that we were going to bring people together, that we were going to have a conversation, a public discourse at a higher level than we had in the past. And so they really came out inspired by him, by the picture that he painted of the Washington, D.C. that he wanted to govern by. But yet after the election, he has done completely the opposite. It's been my way or the highway. In fact, his direct quote was, "We won, you lost."
And he has a lot of I's, by the way, first personal pronouns in his remarks. There's a lot of I. Of course, he can't do that without a teleprompter.
You know, Bill, but the problem is that that's precisely the problem is it has been his way or the highway. And when you have an 80-seat majority in the House and a 60-seat majority in the Senate, you don't need Republicans. You don't need to compromise. You don't need to move to the middle. You don't need to go negotiate. And that's precisely why they have ramrodded through a very, very left-wing agenda. And so, to the original question, what will a majority mean? What will more Republican members of Congress mean? It means that they can't continue to pass bills like cap and trade by 6 votes. It means they can't continue to pass bills like the health care bill by 10 votes. They have an 80-seat majority. If we win 40 or 50 seats, it nips that in the bud and forces them to the center. And just as you saw in '94 with President Clinton, I would argue he became a much better and a much more popular president with Republicans in control of the Congress. My fear long term is it may be Obama's saving grace if Republicans win control of Congress, and it may be why he's able to win a second term.
The health care thing, you know, that hits your desk at night and you're supposed to vote on it the next morning. Something like that in that time frame. There's no way in the world, legislators, I don't care how smart you are, you can be the smartest Rhodes Scholar in the world, you're not going to have time to read this legislation, and you can go in there and vote the way you're told to vote.
Right.
Well, how in the world could anyone out there have possibly read that tome? I understand it was buku pages.
They didn't.
Over 2,000.
Well, so who read it? Who knew what they were voting on?
Even Speaker Pelosi said, we have to pass the bill so we can find out what's in it.
Oh, well, there's a putting the cart before
I mean,
the
if
horse.
it weren't so funny, it'd be scary.
It's not.
But if she says it, it must be true, though, don't you think, Aaron?
Well, I'm not taking her word for it. But, no, to your point, yeah, they didn't read the bill. I mean, you can't read the bill. I mean, the stimulus bill alone, for example, was 1,000 pages. It was filed at 11 p.m. at night. We began debating it at 10 a.m. the next morning.
Well, and let's talk a little bit more about that stimulus bill, too, please. And is this intentional, here's 2,000 pages, we'll talk about it in the morning? Is that how they run
Absolutely.
things?
Well, again, come back to who gives them the power. The leadership in Congress, Speaker Pelosi, is elected by her conference.
Yeah.
And so while it's easy to demonize Speaker Pelosi, the fact of the matter is she's going to get away with whatever she can get away with. No different than a child in the classroom. And so if her colleagues, her Democratic friends, do not hold her accountable and say, you know what, we may have elected you Speaker, but we didn't elect you Czar, we didn't elect you Dictator, and you're not going to just shove a bill in front of us and say vote it up or down. There were 200 amendments filed to the stimulus bill alone. 200 amendments. Over 100 of them were Democratic amendments, which means there were more Democrats who offered changes and revisions to the stimulus bill than even Republicans, and yet she wouldn't allow a single amendment to be heard on the floor